Greetings and salutations. Welcome to a video about audio. Today we're going to talk about this lovely turntable. It is an Orbit by U-Turn, and I've had this machine for about 7 years. When I first got it, I posted several videos, including this turntable, and then as time went by, I got into more sophisticated models of turntables, and this got put into storage. But about twice a year, somebody will ask me, do you still have the U-Turn Orbit? The answer is yes, and I will probably never get rid of it. And if you're somebody who has been following this channel, you know that I have been through a lot of turntables in the last 15 years. But this one has a special place in my heart because it's sort of like a chopper motorcycle. If you look at a custom motorcycle, they don't look like they have enough parts on them for them to work, but they do. And this is kind of the same thing. A turntable, or any recording device, is first and foremost a clock. It has to be able to reproduce time accurately. And in the case of a turntable, you do that by spinning a platter at a prescribed speed, 33 1/3, 45, 78.26, whatever it is. And how you get that to happen is a big part of turntable design. You've heard of direct drive, you've heard of belt drive, DC servo motors, rim drive, all that stuff. This machine is interesting in that it is a belt-driven machine with an AC synchronous motor. The AC synchronous motor locks on to the mains power frequency. In the United States, it's 60 hertz. And it uses that as a reference to spin at the correct RPM. This turntable spins the motor at 300 RPM, and then with the belt and the gear ratio between the pulley back there and it works out to be 33 1/3. And then you move the belt to a bigger pulley and you'll get 45 RPM. And it's very accurate. It's a very simple way of doing it. It's a very elegant design that has sort of fallen by the wayside. Turntables back in the rim drive days, most of those were AC synchronous motors, and that's how they kept the speed proper. So this is kind of nice. It's very simple and straightforward. The other thing about this particular turntable, and the other part of a turntable that is important, is the crane. We call it a tone arm. So a turntable is basically a clock and a crane. And on this turntable, we have the OA2 tone arm, which is the second tone arm that Orbit came up with. The original tone arm that came with the first generation Orbit turntable wasn't all that great. They went back and they came up with a new design, and it's very simple. Once again, this is not a calibrated tone arm. A calibrated tone arm has a counterweight back here that has numbers on it. You can spin it, you can level the arm and set it to zero balance, and then you dial up the tracking force that you need and set the anti-skate and all that stuff. This has a simple counterweight at the back. You slide this counterweight forward and back, and when you find the right spot, you will just take that set screw at top and on top and just tighten it down, which means that if you are going to buy one of these and you are going to be swapping cartridges, you will absolutely positively have to have one of these, which is a stylus force gauge or scale. So that's important. Also, proper alignment of the cartridge is important. And this particular tone arm can do bare-walled or Stevenson. And I like bare-walled, so this is my bare-walled protractor. So I can swap cartridges on this. As far as anti-skate is concerned, this particular tone arm has a built-in preset anti-skate that's centered at right around 2 grams. So it has a range between about 1.5 and 2.5 grams. So any cartridge that tracks in there, you should be all right, and most do. And when I bought this turntable, it had an Ortophone OM5 on it, which is a pretty nice cartridge, OM5E. And I ended up, of course, trying all kinds of different carts on this thing. I found out that there are some that are just not compatible, like you can't do an Audio-Technica AT3600L. You can't get it up to 3 grams. It will not track that heavy. And the other thing about it is the anti-skate will be wrong. So you really need to have something that's close to 2 grams. Fortunately, most modern cartridges these days, that's where they track, is right around 2 grams, so it works out just fine. And the anti-skate on this turntable is set accurately. I've had numerous occasions to observe its behavior, and it works. By the way, I posted a video just before I posted this one about setting anti-skate on a turntable, so if you would, go click on that one too. It should show up in your feed. It may be the next thing that's recommended to you. Give that one a view too. I would appreciate it. Thank you. The cartridge that is on the Orbit right now is kind of interesting in and of itself. It is a lovely Stanton. Zoom in, zoom out a little bit, just a little bit. It is a Stanton 680EE, which is a classic cartridge from the 70s and 80s. I love Stanton cartridges. And you'll notice the cartridge has a brush up front. That is not there to remove dust from the record, although that's a side effect. Several years ago, I did a video where I was talking about a Pickering cartridge that had a brush on it, and some guy said, well, you know, that's just messing up your audio. You ought to take it off. And I said, I think the engineers at Pickering and Stanton knew what they were doing, and then this started a flame thing going back and forth where he went on and on about how it was screwing things up. A lot of people don't understand what these brushes do. I'm going to explain that to you right now because it'll help me explain the arm. So we're looking for 2 grams as the tracking force roundabout for this arm. So if you have, let's say you have an Ortophone 2M Blue, which tracks at 1.8 grams, that's fine. Or even a Denon cartridge, Denon. What is the broadcast cartridge? It's a 103. It's the Japanese. It's been around forever, and it tracks at like 2.3 grams. It'll work on this tone arm. Stanton came up with a way to allow tracking forces at the stylus tip way lower than what the arm is looking for. So this is a medium mass arm, and it's looking for right around 2 grams, which is pretty much just about every other turntable produced these days. There aren't a whole lot of turntables with super low mass arms out there. And the lower the tracking force, the less of the mass of the arm that you want, because that little stylus has to track that groove and also manage whatever forces that are applied to it by the arm itself. So there has to be a match there. So what Stanton came up with was, if they put a brush in front of it, it does 2 things. It dampens the front of the arm, which makes sure that it stabilizes the stylus as it tracks the groove. And it also allows them to design styli that will track much lower than 2 or 3 grams. So this has a very nice elliptical 0.3 by 0.7 stylus that's tracking at 1 gram. And then you add a gram for the brush when you set up the tone arm. So when you set up the total tracking force, what you end up with is 2 grams. That's perfect for the arm. The brush stabilizes for the stylus. The 1 gram tracking stylus will track even warped records beautifully. Isn't that great? So I point that out before somebody says, well, it's kind of stupid to have the brush, because today they don't understand that technology. It's kind of gone by the wayside. And no, the brush does not detract from the audio. You can't hear it tracking the record or anything like that. It's very invisible. Of course, the heavier tracking professional Stanton cartridges that track at 3 grams, they omit the brush because you're already tracking at 3 grams, and it's probably going to be right for the arm and all that other stuff. Plus, you need to back cue those. So a lot of the professional DJ Stanton cartridges are floating around out there. So in 7 years, I have replaced the belt twice. Here's my replacement belt that I bought. I bought turn it right side up, excuse me. Orbit belt, it says here. And you get these from U-Turn. They're relatively inexpensive. They're like under $10. And the first belt lasted me about a year, and then I bought another belt. Number 2 is on the turntable. And what I found out is that the belts will last longer. Come on, phone. There we go. The belts will last longer if you take them off the turntable entirely between the times that you play records. So if you know you're not going to be playing records for a week, for instance, just take the belt off, and then when you go back to play records, restring it, because leaving the belt on keeps it stretched out all the time, and over time it just gets used to being stretched out. Plus, I think the original belts were made out of an inferior rubber, and they've now upgraded them, so that's one of the reasons that this one has lasted so long. And then I've got another belt in case I need it. This turntable is running on the 3rd motor. The motors are made by a company called Birch. When U-Turn started up, they were able to buy a whole warehouse full of untested motors for these turntables. And so some of the motors have bearing problems. And I just won the lottery and got 2 of them that didn't work. And they just sent me a new one, postage free. I just sent them a note and said, hey, I've got a motor, it's ticking, it's not running right. And they just sent me a new one. So I've actually replaced the motor in this turntable twice. We're on the 3rd motor. This motor has lasted many, many years, and I don't anticipate a problem with it because, as I said, when they bought the whole warehouse full of motors, some of those motors they knew were going to be wonky, and so they were ready for that. So if you have an Orbit, contact them. They'll send you another motor. It's not that big a deal. If you have a Orbit and the motor goes bad, that is, don't just call them up and ask for a motor if yours is working properly. It's probably okay. Anyway, Orbit gets in touch with me. You posted a video and people have been asking for motors. There's no reason. They're working fine. Why did you do that? Yeah, but they're super nice there. The technical support and the customer care is just beyond belief. Orbit is a small company in the Boston area of the United States, Boston, Massachusetts. And they started out as, I think it was a Kickstarter thing. A couple of college kids had an idea to build a turntable. They did it. They've managed to stay in business now for, I think, well over 10 years. And their products have just continued to improve. Now they have a turntable called a Theory. It's more of a higher-end turntable. And this one allows electronic speed change. It's got a DC servo motor on it. I don't know whether that's DC servo with some sort of feedback, like like a quartz lock on that. No, I don't know. I don't know a great deal about the Theory, but it appears to be a very nice turntable, and it runs about $1,000. And every review that I've heard from it about it says it's very good. The Orbits have gotten some upgrades too. They now have the OA3 tone arm, which is made out of magnesium, but they still sell on their website the basic Orbit here. And I don't know whether they're just selling off old stock or whether they actually still make these things. I don't know. I wouldn't mind buying one again. I think they're great turntables if you get a cartridge from them that you're going to be happy with. So it falls into 2 categories. If you like to tinker and you have all of these lovely tools that I'm showing you, this is a fun turntable to play with. And it's fun to play records on. It's one of those turntables that goes, come on, man, play another. Play another. Because it's just, you look at it and you go, it shouldn't be doing what it's doing, but it does it. It's so simple. The arm is a simple crane, and the drive system is just a simple AC synchronous motor on a belt, and there's no hocus pocus. It's all right in front of you, but it's still magical in its own way. The audio quality on this, by the way, is great, and I was really surprised how well it did with this Stanton cartridge. When I got these Stanton cartridges, it's one of the first things that went through my head was, oh, I've got an EE, and that would work perfectly on an Orbit. I want to try that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that right now. And then I ended up having a problem with my Fluence RT85, which is what sparked the anti-skate video I posted, because the anti-skate mechanism in that arm has gone bad. So I'm not going to play my records with no anti-skate. So that is put to the side until I figure out what I'm going to do with it. And I put this in place, and I went ahead and put the Stanton cartridge on it. And I was just amazed at how well it tracked. Because even though these cartridges have the stabilizer brush and they do all that stuff, they're still finicky. I mean, you're tracking a stylus at 1 gram. That arm better be right. And it is. Sounds wonderful. The only thing about the Orbit that is a downside sound-wise is the fact that this is just a solid plinth. This is just a piece of MDF. That's all this is. And it has solid rubber feet on the bottom. It has 3 of them. And the motor, even though it's pretty well isolated, it's in a rubber boot, and there's a control board for the motor that basically has a big old Sprague orange drop cap on it. That's the run capacitor for that AC motor, and I think it transmits a little bit of vibration through the control wires that run from the motor to the board. And there's no way to get around it. I've tried them twisted and untwisted and all that stuff. So if you put on a pair of headphones, there is a little bit of motor noise. And it's not that much, and after a while you totally get used to it. And honestly, I don't hear it through speakers at normal level, and I've got a subwoofer on this thing, and my system's very warm. So I'd have to turn it up really loud to hear that. Headphones, it's more obvious, but still, it's one of those situations where you go, okay, that's the Orbit, that's the way it is, it's fine, and you just live with it. This is not, if my dual CS618Q direct drive turntable had that much noise in it, I would be very upset, because that's a very sophisticated direct drive mechanism that's extraordinarily quiet, and its build is being quiet with extremely low rumble. It's like 80 dB down. This would bother me if I could hear rumble. But for this turntable and the way it's made, I don't have a problem with it. Just something to be aware of. So if you're one of those people that freaks out if you hear any rumble or motor noise at all, this isn't the turntable for you. But if you're going to be listening through moderate volume and you just want to hear the music and it's okay, this is a great choice. And it's relatively cheap. You can get a basic one. They charge extra for a lifter. You can get it with a preamp built into it in the back, so you don't have to plug it into a receiver with a phono input or buy an outboard preamp. There's all kinds of, you can totally customize these things. They have several cartridges that are available. Orbit has become a dealer now for the AT91B cartridge, which is actually one of my favorite cartridges. It's a very basic cartridge. Basically it's an AT3600, but it's a little bit smoother, and it's got a nicer sound. And I had it on this turntable when I first pulled it out of storage, and I really liked the way it sounded. And so they actually sell those now, and you can get Grado cartridges, and you can get Ortophone. They have a selection. So pick one that you like, and put you a turntable together, and you're good to go. It's awesome. Check them out at U-Turn Audio. I think it's uturn.com, whatever it is. I'll put it in the description for the video. A quick search online for U-Turn Audio will bring it up. So there you go, gang. It is an update on my lovely U-Turn Orbit turntable, and it does its obligation of being a clock and quite well, and the crane works very well. So great little machine, highly recommended. And probably show up in some more videos here, maybe. We'll see. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your comments and suggestions. Put them in the box below. Talk to you again soon.